Hey y'all, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of my podcast. Now, before we dive into the episode, in case this is your first time tuning in, this is the B Channel podcast where my objective is to bless, edify, and encourage others to live their best lives. Make sure that you take the time to like and share this episode if it blessed you. And please bless us with a subscribe and or a follow to this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. You can also catch up with me at B Channel 27 on all my socials. I will include my links in the episode description. Now, without further ado, let's get into today's book. It is called Where Prayer Becomes Real. How Honesty with God Transforms Your Soul. It is written by Kyle Strobel and John Coe. Kyle Strobel is a speaker, writer, and professor of spiritual theology and formation at Talbot School of Theology at B.E.E. University. A popular speaker, Strobel is the author of Formed for the Glory of God and co-author of Beloved Dust and The Way of the Dragon or The Way of the Lamb. He has written for Relevant, Pastors.com, Christianity Today, The Gospel Coalition, DeeperStory.com, and others. He and his family live in Fullerton, California, where he serves on the preaching team of Redeemer Church. John Coe is director of the Institute for Spiritual Formation and professor of spiritual theology and philosophy at Talbot School of Theology and Rosemead School of Psychology at B.E.E. University. A leading expert on spiritual formation, he is a popular speaker on the topic at churches, retreats, and seminaries across the nation. He holds 3 master's degrees in Bible, theology, and philosophy, and a PhD in philosophy from the University of California, Irvine. He lives in La Mirada, California. So that's just a little bit about these 2 gentlemen who wrote this book. And there were so many good parts to this book. But, overall, I thought it was a thought-provoking read on the real meaning and purpose of prayer. And they talk a lot in part 1 of the book, because broken down into 2 parts. They talk a lot about the misconceptions that we have about prayer. That's what they spend part 1 talking about. In part 2, they get deeper into the inner workings, the nuances of prayer, if you will. And they talk about 5 different kinds of prayer. And this really blew my mind, y'all, because I did not know that there were this many kinds of prayer. There's the prayer of intention, where you say to God, I'm with you, God. I'm here with you. I'm gonna stay with you. I'm gonna abide with you throughout my day. There's the prayer of the Psalms. 3 different kinds of Psalms, y'all. I didn't know that Psalms could be broken down into 3 different categories, such as orientation, reorientation, and disorientation. Orientation is, when you know how you're supposed to feel about life and about God. And it's those joyous Psalms that really make you happy when you read them, right? Then they have reorientation Psalms, which kind of bring you back. Bring back to your remembrance who God is and what he's done. Those kinds of Psalms that say, but I meditate on all your works, those kinds of Psalms. And then there are disorientation Psalms, which, they really express that full range of emotion that people go through, in terms of those dark emotions with the anguish and the sorrow, the anger, the rage even. And it's something that you would think that is not conducive in prayer. You would think that certain things are off limits, but this book just really turns all of those things on its head in that regard. And then there's the prayer of examine, y'all, where you really take a minute to sit back and just really think about where you are and reflect on how you've been feeling, over a period of time, whether that's a week or a month, weekly or monthly to check in with yourself in that way. Then there's a prayer of recollection where you're kind of just coming back to God. You're bringing yourself back to being like centered, in terms of your relationship with God. And last but not least, the prayer of intercession where you pray for others. Now, there was so much psychology attached to this whole idea of prayer in terms of praying for others that I did not even realize, y'all. You have to be present with God, which means that, are you distracted when you're praying for someone? Are you really truly connecting like with God when it comes to this person's petitions that you're sending up to God on their behalf? Then are you present with yourself? Like, how are you really feeling? Being honest and vulnerable about what you're really feeling with God. And then also being present with others. And what really struck me about that is, there's an empathy required when you pray, on behalf of other people. You have to really delve into, how are they feeling? Are they in anguish? Are they in sorrow? Are they sad? Are they angry? Are they happy? Are they joyful? What are their feelings? Because when you tap into that space, you can go deeper. You say, you can say to God, like, God, I know that this must be a really difficult time right now. They must be in so much sorrow, so much pain, Lord, to really just go into those places for that person. And that was just so deep because I had never thought about any of that when it came to prayer in that regard. But they had said something in Psalm 139 in the appendix, because in the back of the book they have these appendix things that teach you about how to pray in these different ways that they've talked about throughout the book. And they said something in Psalm 139 that I was like, I don't know, because in certain Psalms, certain writers will say, that they want God to take vengeance and do certain things. And I was like, I just didn't know that was like okay to say to God, so that was enlightening to me. And they had a redemptive clause after that. After I read what they said, and then they redeemed themselves. And I was like, okay, I get where y'all coming from with this, because how could it really be, so wrong if it was written and, it was something that they really felt. You have to be real about how you feel about things. And so aside from that little moment I had, I would say that this was a solid read. And of course, no book is perfect because it has human authors. But what this book taught me is that prayer benefits from a framework, such as the Psalms, the framework that they give you for prayer. But don't be fake with God. If you can't be real with anyone else, you have to know how to be real with God, because it's like, come on, like he knows it all anyway. So let's just tell him how we feel, be honest. And that was something that they reiterated over and over. Like, man, if you don't feel, even if you don't feel like doing what he's asked you to do, if you don't feel good, like, or if you don't feel like just being with him, like, even say that. And that was the wildest thing to me that I never even thought you can say. And it was so good though. And so I would say, if you're someone who's struggling with prayer, if you're doing it right, if you're doing it good enough, if you feel like you don't know what to say, or if you don't know a lot about prayer, this book is an eye opener. It's revelatory in that way. So it's going to bless you. Now, these are not things that I would say, oh, overnight I can just really take all this in and just digest it and incorporate it. No, it's going to take a lifetime of learning to do this, and what I loved about it was they said they made sure that you knew that prayer is not about being good. It's about being honest with God and just really having that intimacy with him and saying how you really feel about things. And I felt that was such a relief to understand that and to know that, and to just really hear them say that, it's okay to feel how you feel. It's okay to have real feelings. And that's something a lot of people need to know. It's really liberating for a lot of people to know that. And so, You can find this book on Amazon or wherever books are sold, I'm sure. And they don't really have a social media presence. So I would just say, they have a lot more books you can check out. And so that's something to look into. And I really appreciate y'all for tuning in. I hope that this episode blessed you in some way, shape, or form, and that you go check out this book. And once again, it's called Where Prayer Becomes Real by Kyle Strobel and John Coe. So please go check out this book when you get a chance, especially if you want to work on your prayer life, or if you've been thinking about prayer lately and you want to get better, like not in terms of being a perfectionist, y'all, but just knowing more about it and just being like more informed about what it really means. So it's a great read. So with that being said, for all of my listeners on Spotify and Google, be sure to leave a review and a rating so more people can find out about this podcast. I really would appreciate it. Please share with a friend or a family member. Please follow and or subscribe so that more people can find this podcast as well. So I really appreciate any and all of those things. If you could do that, that would be amazing. Thank you so much for listening. And I can't wait to spill the tea with you on another book. But until next time, peace and blessings.